So as we move into our final presentation of the live stream before we bring it together with a close at the end, I'm really excited to have Chris Packart here from US Ski and Snowboard. And I don't know if Chris knows this, but prior to his getting hired at Ski and Snowboard, I actually had a conversation with the coaching education person there and the person who had just been hired. And I said, so why in the world are you qualified as a coach to do coaching education? And I sort of was giving him a hard time and needling him, and Chris will know who I'm speaking of. And he called me about 4 months later and said, you were right. So I hired somebody. And I was really, really excited, not just because Chris is a mountaineer and did his graduate work here, but just that he went outside into what Melissa was talking about and those important other disciplines that inform what we do, and got somebody with a curriculum and design specialization and a real emphasis in that area that could do some amazing leadership that's now shown, 4 years later, in the work that he's been doing with US Ski and Snowboard and their coaching education. So pleased to bring up Chris Packart to speak about what US Ski and Snowboarding is doing.
Thank you. Hi everyone, how you doing? Good. Well, it's a pleasure to be here today and to participate in these presentations. I'm really psyched, and what great stuff to walk away with from all your presentations and really think about where we want to head in the future. So, like Kristen was saying, my background, I did my undergrad and graduate degrees here, first graduate degree here at WVU, and I became after a stint in Beaver Creek as a ski instructor. I was going to blow off a year between undergrad and graduate school, and 1 year bled into 2, and I eventually came back and got a master's in curriculum and instruction from West Virginia University, and then became a high school science teacher for 12 years and taught biology, chemistry, and earth science. And then that kind of led to a second master's degree in instructional design from George Mason University, and that took me out of the high school classroom, and I started working for the Marines to refurbish their curriculum for their sergeants and corporals, and then that took me then to the world of academia, and I worked for American Public University and Western Governors University, which is where US Ski and Snowboard and my good buddy from Morgantown, when we were both here as undergrads, found me and invited me to interview for the position of Coach Development Manager for US Ski and Snowboard, and that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. So hopefully I'll give you a window into our world, and it was pretty cool listening to the presentations today and thinking about the framework and the curriculum that we've set up for our coaches, and I think you'll see some alignments with what people were presenting and what we now offer. So I'll jump right in here. Okay, so if you know of the golden circle of starting with why, I always like to start my presentations with why. Why do we do what we do? And this takes us to our philosophy in the sport education department, where a good coaching system leads to, gotta put on my glasses here, better coaching performance, which ultimately leads to better athlete outcomes, not just in the athletic spectrum, but also in character development as well. So, as you see these slides, keep that in mind, because that's really what we're shooting for. So to give you a little background on our organization that'll kind of help to create your mental model, US Ski and Snowboard oversees 7 different sporting disciplines. So we have alpine, snowboard, free ski, freestyle, cross country, ski jumping, and Nordic combined. So if you think of that, we have 4 different levels of certification. We have a 100, a 200, a 300, and a 400, multiplied by 7 different disciplines. So just right there, that's 28 separate curriculums. And then this year, we just started a coach developer training course to now train our coach developers to facilitate these experiences for our coach candidates that are coming up for certification. So with that in mind, 7 disciplines, 2 tracks of curriculums. Now we're up to 56 separate curriculums in one organization. So as I'm going to talk about in a little while, having a scalable, replicable model becomes really important in reaching your end goals. So we currently have approximately 6,000 registered member coaches, and about half of those 3,000 coaches are participating in our coach education program across the 7 disciplines. And 90% of those coaches reside in the Alpine discipline. So this is a really important note here. So in 2022, we're moving to a model where all coaches, in order to step onto any officially sanctioned event, have to have a level 100 certification. So that's pretty awesome if you think about it, because now we are raising the quality and the standards that we can now set for coaches to obtain before we allow them onto our venues. And as an interesting note, Nadine and I are working together. It's called the Apollo Project, and her team is working with us to kind of get a pulse on where our national team coaches are, and to facilitate some coach development in that space as well. But currently, national team coaches don't need any level of certification to coach on the national team. So 3 years ago, I was hired by, many of you know him in here, John Casson. He's one of my really good friends from undergrad. And the first thing we did was we did a needs analysis on our current model, and to see kind of, what did it look like? For me, coming into this job, I really didn't know. So I really wanted to get a better understanding on what it was that we were trying to accomplish. So, here's a very generalized statement, but this is kind of how it went. So candidates receive a manual. So the Alpine Level 100 manual is 113 pages long about coaching. They attend a multi-day on-snow clinic where coaches are managed by what was called at the time a clinic leader, and we've now changed that to coach developer, and taken through a series of on-snow exercises to identify appropriate coaching methods and determine their ability to coach. Okay, so at the end of the first day after being on snow for 6 hours, they meet in the lodge and they go over a multi-hour PowerPoint that delivers the information from the clinic leader about the manual. I actually sat through the level 100 to kind of see what it was all about, and you could just see the glazed looks, and you really need to think about how much of that information was being retained and transferred and digested. After successfully completing the on-snow portion of the course, they then accessed the online exam, which was 100 questions, very, very specific questions. When I took it, it took me, I think, 3 hours to complete, and they needed to get an 80% or better to get their certification. So there's some things there as you as educators can see why this model isn't the most effective, right? A, you're delivering so much information in such a short amount of time that how much of that information is really being retained. B, candidates are showing up for these clinics without having any prior education or experience, so the amount of ability that they're coming with was so incredibly variable. So in 2016, John was hired as the sport ed director. And then in September, I got an email. I was sitting at my desk working for Western Governors University as an instructional designer. We've had many conversations about what he wanted to do with his department. And I got an email and it said, "Dude, just got promoted. Do you want my old job?" And I was like, "Yes, I'd love to work for US Ski and Snowboard." So I had to go through an official interviewing process, and I came up with a model that used, that was standardized, scalable. It was a blended learning model that was based on all the stuff that I'd learned about e-learning and training and all that kind of stuff. So I presented this idea to leadership, and in October they endorsed the process and hired me to totally revamp the way that we do things. So to give you an idea of what this model looked like, and it's hard to do this in 14 minutes because I'm kind of giving you the elevator pitch, but our process is based on some sound instructional models, like the community of inquiry model that looks at the educational experience through the lens of the social aspect, the cognitive aspect, and the teaching aspect. The Dick and Carey model of instructional development, how you create a curriculum and all the steps that you need to take to make it effective. The full range leadership model to give us our North Star of what a transformational coach looks like. Growth mindset, Carol Dweck, and the fact that it doesn't really matter how many years you've been coaching, everybody can learn something new and can integrate that into their process. The Fitz and Posner skill acquisition model. This is what we use. This is the basis of our rubrics for evaluating coaches. And then, the list goes on. Many other sound principles were put into practice. So today, this is really what our coach development process looks like. So what you instantly notice are there's different colors here, right? And the colors stand for different parts of this process. So the red color is identifying what the performance goals are that you're trying to obtain in every sport and every level. It's important to say here that our coach development process is based on long-term athletic development. We have a process in place that's called our training systems, and it's a 6-phase process, and I'll show you a slide here on it in a little while. But in Alpine alone, what a 100 level coach needs to know versus what a 200 level coach needs to know, and in applying course setting techniques and tactics and modifying course sets for desired outcomes and all that kind of stuff, the performance goals are totally different. So the first step in this is to identify what are those performance goals that the coach needs to know and be able to do to optimally impact their athletes. And then the second part of this is a 2-step process where you conduct a needs analysis and identify those entry-level behaviors. And so what are, based on these performance objectives or goals, what are coaches doing in the field? And then that brings us to kind of the linear progression of, okay, here's the goals, here's what we see, how do we change the landscape? What competencies and learning outcomes, transformational competencies and learning outcomes do we need to put into place to change the landscape over time? And then you develop a growth strategy, and for us, it takes on several layers, but it's basically focusing on a blended learning model where we deliver the content to coaches through e-learning modules. They complete a portfolio. So the knowledge piece is the e-learning modules. The application piece is the portfolio. We ask them to write a coaching philosophy and come up with a session plan and to actually take that information and digest it into something tangible. And then they do a on-snow face-to-face portion where they share their portfolios. Collaborative learning for us is really important. They bring their portfolios to the on-snow. The coach developer engages them in an activity where they digest and discuss their portfolio as a group. They go through the on-snow piece, and at that time what we've done is we've leveled the playing field for what coaches know before they come to that experience, so that the coach developer can start to have some really in-depth conversations and kind of expect a higher level of proficiency from the people that are now attending that certification process. And then we create the transformational materials. I'll show you a bit about that in a second. Then we release the courses and get the coaches involved in that. So where we are now, so when we started this process, it was just John and I. We didn't have a team. So imagine, at the time it was 28 different curriculums. He and I were plugging away at this. It was kind of a slow process, but now we actually have a highly engaged team, and we work so well together. And now we've really pushed the bar on. We're starting to see the fruits of our labor at this time. And so right now we're at step 7. So we haven't really done an evaluation yet to see where our strengths are and where areas that we can improve. And that's sort of this coming summer we're going to start that layer. So I just gave you the quick review there of that. So I was talking about this. So now John's actually moved on to other opportunities, and we have a really great new sport ed director by the name of Guard Trainer. Fantastic guy, and he totally supports what we're doing, and he's jumped right in, and he's carrying the torch towards our end goals. And then in addition to him, we have a coordinator, a club development manager, coach development manager. We just hired an instructional designer. We have a videographer on our team and a graphic designer. So that team works together to create that content. So where are we now? In 3 years now, we have completed 6 out of the 7 level 100 curriculums, 3 level 100 coach developer curriculums we just released a couple weeks ago, 1 continuing education course for Alpine, since it's 90% of our coaching base. We'll continue to release those courses as well. Modified 3 level 100 curriculums and are currently working on the final level 100 curriculum, the 200 Alpine curriculum, 2 additional level 100 coach developer curriculums, and the list goes on. We have so many things going on in our wheelhouse. It's awesome. Job security for sure. Another exciting thing is we have, so up until this year, an organization called the United States of America Snowboard and Free Ski Association, or USASA for short, was in charge of delivering our 100 and 200 certifications. And they like what we have done so much that now they've partnered with us, and we're creating the courses for them to deliver, which is it's a great partnership. I'm really happy about that. So how do we do it? We use a content authoring tool called Evolve. And there's a couple reasons that we picked this tool. Number one, it's easy to use. You don't need any coding to use it. It delivers a really engaging environment for learners. It's really easy to bring in multimedia assets to accentuate the content. As you can see, it's branded to our logo, so that branding piece is really important. Multiple people can work in one environment at the same time. Reviewers can review courses in the same environment as developers are developing the content. And then we use Moodle as our LMS, and what you notice here, community of practice is a really important piece to us, collaboration with our coaches from around the country. So we just started this community forum piece, and we're going to be building that out. I have some ideas of how to make that work. And then what you see is it's a 8-step process to get your certification, so it's easy to digest. You do step 1, you go to step 2, you go to step 3, and so basically, without getting into each one of these steps, they need to upload their requirements for first aid, CPR, and heads-up concussion training. They've already done the safe sports stuff. Then there's a plugin for Moodle that they can pick where they're going to do their on-site clinic, and as soon as they pick that, it creates groups of participants and a coach developer. So it does that automatically. And then they go through the content, they upload their portfolio, and they segue down to when, after they complete the final exam with an 80%, they can print out their certificate that they completed the course. So it's very straightforward. This course that you see here is scalable, because all we have to do is download this course and use it as a shell for every single level 100, and then just change the terminology from alpine to snowboarding to free ski, whatever. So, the ease of creating content when you have so many curriculums is really important, and it's something that you need to focus on. So graphically, where are we? this is what we've accomplished, this is where we are, and this is where we're going. So we have a coaching fundamentals course that every single new coach member into our organization takes. So this is for volunteers and first-time coaches, and it goes over things like ethics and philosophy, roles and responsibilities, long-term athletic development, training environment, and teaching and learning or pedagogy. So all first-time coaches take that to become eligible. Then we have this 4-level tiered structure for all of our 7 disciplines. Right now we're working on this clinic leader training course to actually train, coach developers how to deliver these courses most effectively. And then by 2022, that's the magic year, because by that time we have to have a robust professional development process in place so that we can start tracking where coaches are with their certifications lapsing. So what lies ahead? We need to get better at creating a systematic way of getting the content from the experts. This has been our biggest struggle because people are so busy and they want to do right and they want to participate in this process, but it's very slow to get the content out of them. So this summer we're going to actually have a work camp in Park City where these subject matter experts are going to come in and we're going to get it done in a week. Just have them work for a week on this. Begin the evaluation revision phase of the coach development process. Continue to build, revise, unite our curriculum materials. Create a robust professional development curriculum. Develop a community of continue to develop a community of practice of coaches around the country, and to continue to streamline our processes. So, our future is super bright. We have a great team, and we're moving forward. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.